Are you tired of your car getting low drift points, not impressing anyone at the meet with your tune, or your car just not getting sideways at all? If so, this video's for you. Hey guys, Jack Swiss here, and today's video is going to be another drifting tutorial. However, rather than telling you about the best cars or teaching you a new technique, this video is going to be focused on the upgrading and tuning aspect, and by the end of it, you'll hopefully know how to drift tune every car in the game. I've made videos like this in the past, but none like this one and none with voice, so the structure of this video will be a bit different, and the steps, in order, are choosing the type of car you want to build, choosing the car itself, upgrading it, tuning it, and testing the car out. And although some steps might not sound important initially, believe me, you'll be thanking yourself for this process when your car goes from this to this. Or maybe something like this, depending on your preferences. Which brings us to the first section of the video, deciding the type of build you want to create. This is a crucial step in the process that you might do subconsciously, but that's still important to register early on if you're struggling to make a good drift tune. Sometimes, you might make a car with the wrong focus in mind and completely ruin your experience with it, or sometimes you might just jump into upgrading and tuning without a clue what you're making or how to make it. So although it is small, you still should definitely figure out the focus of your build, which might not only impact upgrading or even tuning, which I'll get into later in the video, but also the car that you choose to upgrade, which leads me to the next step of choosing a car to upgrade and tune. This, obviously being the most obvious step, is one that people are prone to gloss over, but one that you should definitely put some thought into before making your decision. Just think back to the last step and the type of build you want to make though, and you'll be fine. For instance, if you're thinking about a low horsepower build, go with something that has decent upgrade potential and that's not too heavy. And if you're thinking about a high horsepower build, then go with something with great engine swaps and that's as light as a feather. I have multiple videos on this topic if you're interested, but for now, we'll gloss over the actual selection process and assume that you have a car already, and that you're ready to move on to upgrading and tuning. Next on the to-do list is to upgrade your car, and at this point, you're really the one in control. Everything you do from this point and beyond is completely based on the type of build you want to create. I personally chose to go for a LS, or V8, swap and all race upgrades, but you definitely don't have to upgrade the car as heavily as I am to get sideways. And if you're short on money, then feel free to go with cheaper performance mods, but be aware that their cheapness is at the cost of power, and more importantly, tuning options down the line. So as long as you're aware of that, feel free to do whatever your heart desires for this step. And when you're done with that, then you're ready to move on to tuning. So you know what you want to build, you have your upgraded car, and you're ready to tune. However, you don't know where to even begin with tire pressure, spring stiffness, and all of the other panels that might seem like gibberish now, but as you'll soon find out, make a massive difference later on. So to teach you the importance of each one of them, I've split the tuning section into 3 parts. The first of which is going to cover tire pressure, gear ratios and alignment. The second is going to cover your anti-roller bars and the formula I use to tune mine. And the third is going to cover applying that formula to the rest of your build. So if you're ready to move on, then let's get into tuning. So for tires, I like to set my rear ones with a low PSI somewhere around 20, and my front ones with a high PSI somewhere around 40. I've seen others do it other ways, but I tune mine like that because it allows your rear tires to heat up faster, and your front ones to grip. So you can really tune this how you want, but I prefer to keep my tires around those vicinities on all of my builds. As for gearing, I usually like to tune this on the track, but I generally like to put my final drive to where the last gear is touching the line, and I like to put my second or third gears down to make sure that I'm not bouncing off the red line. And finally, if you're doing an aggressive build like I am, put both camber options at -5, both toe options at +5, and your caster angle at 0. If you're not doing an aggressive build, though, You can tune these to wherever you want to. And as for anti-roll bars and the formula which you'll be using for the anti-roll bars, springs and dampers if you want to, you should see it on screen now. A huge thank you to the YouTuber Hoki Hoshi for his video and this formula which I'll link in the description. But this formula is definitely effective at giving you at least a base value to tune. And if you're still confused on how to find weight distribution, simply go to your engine upgrades, select any upgrade, and your front weight percentage will be there. And in my case, my front is 55% and my rear is 45%. And once you plug in those values to the equation, you should get something that looks a bit like this depending on your car. And at this point, I usually just like to move them down quite a bit while making sure to keep the ratio intact. And for springs and ride height, do the equation again but with the springs this time, and I usually like to soften them similarly to how I would soften the anti-roll bars. And for the ride height, keep it minimum. Now for dampers, you can put in the formula and tune to your own tastes, but I usually just like to use the formula of soft bump stiffness and stiff rebound stiffness. I wouldn't personally worry about aero for a drift build, but for the brakes, I usually set the brake bias towards the front, and the pressure at 150. And finally for differential, if I'm doing an aggressive build, I usually set both the front and the rear to 100, but if I'm doing a slow build, I'd probably set it somewhere near 75. And for your power balance, though this depends heavily on the car, I usually stay around the early 80s for all of my builds. Though if you're experiencing understeer, consider turning up this value. And that's it. After all of that, you've successfully tuned a drift car. Now of course, there's a lot of variables involved, such as what car you chose, how heavily you upgraded it, and how well you tuned it. But when you finally take it out for a drive and if it has a decent amount of power under the hood, it should go something like this. If you're a beginner at drifting or tuning, you might not be able to drift like that, which is what step 5, testing your car out, is for. And when I say test it out, I don't just mean drifting it. Any good tuner will tell you that the initial tune that you put on a car is constantly evolving, and that no tune, especially one that was just made, is perfect. So when you're testing it out, really be sure to diagnose any problems that you might have while drifting, and utilize trial and error until it's resolved. I'll be coming out with a video in the near future about how to diagnose and fix problems while drifting, so be sure to subscribe to see that one. But for now, just enjoy your build, and if you have any questions, be sure to comment them. And if you follow all of those steps, you should be able to tune any car in the game. If you need help with picking cars, be sure to click here. If you need help with anything drift related, click here. And finally, if you want to see more content like this in the future, be sure to click here. Also, if you like the new editing style, be sure to like the video, or comment if you didn't. But that should do it for this video. So I'm Jack Swiss, and thanks for watching.